talking matters, what's working, what's not working. But before all of that, do you want to share our quote of the day?
That's right.
See if it resonates.
See if it resonates at all. The quote of the day is by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and it says, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." Again, I'll say that. Dr. Martin Luther King said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice."
Does that mean anything to you?
Of course, it means a lot because I love Martin Luther King Jr. In fact, he is a very great inspiration to many Kenyans. I mean, maybe if Janet allows me, I would also want to quote again from him because he says, "All labor that uplifts humanity has dignity and therefore importance, and therefore should be pursued with painstaking excellence." So I think
all labor that uplifts humanity
has dignity and therefore should be pursued with painstaking excellence.
I like that. That's an amazing quote. I think whatever it is that you're going out to do today to earn your bread, I think remember that quote. Remember that quote.
Remember that quote. And I think something else, and thank you for joining us in studio. I think let's start by talking a little bit about the political atmosphere in the country, Mr. Mwaura. And it really feels like we're right back at election mode. 2027 is a year and a half or so away. The political temperature is really more about election mode at this point.
Well, I think there's something that since I became government spokesperson 18 months ago, I'm also in my half term, 18 months ago, there's something I've realized, a dichotomy between government communication and political communication. Now, I would want to dare say that political communication is the mother of all communication because it then speaks to the soul of the nation. Our government communication speaks to the head. It's more brainy kind of thing, and people want to connect how they are made to feel. Now, we just come from the 5-day tour, development tour of Mount Kenya region, presidential tour. And you could see the clear nexus between development and politics. Because people vote in a government with the idea that then that government is going to fix their problems. But at the same time, it's also about how you connect with them. It's also about how you relate with them. And that is equally more important. So finding a mix between the two is important. And so when you talk about election mode, Janet, we've been on an election mode since 2002. This country is very interesting. And the moment we tend to settle, which favors more of development, then you will always find that some people have been run out of their jobs. So there are people who thrive when there is political competition. And they will do anything to ensure that we go back to it. And I can tell you, I've seen that practically. But I also think Kenyans are so used to it. It's kind of become a sport, which is not a very good thing, I must confess. My take is that it's not necessarily a very good thing. But that's who we are. That's who we've become. And so therefore, you have to live with it. Because I just came the other day from Geneva, Switzerland, and they were having elections. But you wouldn't even tell there were elections other than the fact that you would see the occasional very, advertisement kind of posters of the collegiate groups of people who are running for whatever positions that they were running for. So that has become our culture. We are highly political. And if you look at the development of nations, even in terms of human rights, you start with the civil and political. So I tend to imagine that we are more of a civil and political stage before we come to socioeconomic, which then is more of a middling class kind of society. So we are a lower middle income society, but then we still are trying to organize. We are still a community of nations that is trying to find its own relevance. And I think His Excellency President William Ruto is very deliberate on ensuring that we unite every Kenyan under the broad-based government. Yes.
We'll come back to that statement in a few moments and reactions from you saying, yes, the president is uniting, but from what others are saying. But just to take you back a bit, I think we're aware that Kenya is one of those countries where elections, the election period, they're usually hot, they're heavy, people are very vocal. But a lot of people don't seem to have faith in this current government. And I'm just wondering, as the spokesperson, is the onus not also on you to instill that very same faith back to the public? Are you supposed to be reporting to your bosses? Are you supposed to be speaking on behalf of the people of Kenya?
I think when you are a government spokesperson, you speak on behalf of the government. So you relay, number one is to give official government statements or to clarify on certain matters or to defend government positions. That is how I analyze my job. To state what is a government position, to clarify, sometimes there's misunderstanding or misinformation, disinformation, or to defend a certain position. Now, the governments are never popular the world over. Immediately a government is elected, people then tend to start bashing on it. I think it becomes a bogeyman. I mean, like, everybody wants to blame for this and that. And that's the work of government. And that is why we have, again, a dichotomy within government of civil servants, career civil servants who are perpetually in office until they retire. And then there are also administration, staffers who come with a particular administration. Now, I am the 5th government spokesperson appointed by the 5th president. So I serve the 5th administration. And what is our agenda? The better plan. And it is very, very clear, Janet, Mariam, that we have 5 pillars that we are trying to prioritize over and above a myriad of things that government must do. And sometimes one may actually say that at times government spreads itself too thinly to cover as much as possible within a limited resource envelope. And that then calls for partnership. That calls for collaboration. But then you have also to remember, by the end of the day, there's something that you promised and you have to deliver. So yes, my role is to explain government, is to defend government, is to state government.
All right. Looking at, for example, the Mount Kenya tour that we've just come from, which has been what looks like from the outside an effort to galvanize the Mount Kenya region, which speaks to what Janet is saying. We're kind of in election mode. But then you worry about the work that is not getting done in place of these the tours, whether it's going to Western Kenya, whether it's going to the coast, whether it's going to Mount Kenya, on the ground people are like, you know what, Shifsha, we're not sure it's quite working. This education system, balancing, we're trying to make sure that JSS teachers are placed, that there's capitation, all of that. There's new tariffs being announced from the West, and I'm seeing other countries coming out and saying, their presidents coming out and saying, this is what the tariffs are going to do to us. As a Singaporean president, for example, did a national address and said, we've been given 10%, this is what it means. But come to Kenya, it's, let me galvanize Mount Kenya, let me galvanize the coast, let me etc. When does the work get done? I
think it's a situation of chewing gum and working at the same time. And for me, having participated in the recent Mount Kenya tour, in fact, yesterday we were giving thanks at PCA church in Mugoga with the leader of majority and other members of parliament. It's very clear that these are Siamese twins. They are joined in the hip. So people come and they tell His Excellency the President, these are the development priorities that we have. And then it's up to now the government, ministries, CSS and PSS, to prioritize this in the budget, and of course to say what already is currently, on board. So it's very, very interesting, because sometimes when you sit in offices, it's very easy to assume that you know what are the priorities of the people have. There will always be more demands than what you can do. And so therefore, I think it's we have in the Constitution public participation. There can never be a better way of public participation than leaders assembling and saying these are our priorities, because they are the ones with the people. But at the same time, it's the state which is more to do with the politics of the day, I think, ceremonies and what have you, the functions, and then you have the government, which then drives the agenda. And for me now, I'm the government spokesperson, so I speak for the government, the work that is being done hands-on. And I will tell you, Marian, with a lot of confidence, this government has outdone itself. I was looking at how, for example, Coca-Cola and Pepsi were fighting in the 1970s, 80s, and how, Pepsi was tasting better, but Cola beat Pepsi in the branding. I think that's sometimes where the issue is, with the advent of social media, because everybody has leverage in terms of they can speak, they can misquote anyone. It's not like the way we were just dealing with the mainstream media, which was also fashioned around how government also runs because of ownership, laws and control and advertisement. Now everyone can go to Twitter make something out of themselves. So you have a situation where people then are making government to be less believable because they can question. Yet there's a lot of good information of what government has been able to do that sometimes it actually gets drowned in this communication or information avalanche.
Right.
Avalanche, you know. So I think on one hand, yes, are we dealing with the issue of the US? Yes. Just as late as yesterday, His Excellency President William Ruto made the presidential advisor to Donald Trump. These are some of the issues that they discussed. And we go through that list. It's very interesting because those countries that have got very high tariffs, the high tariffs, I beg your pardon, were being halved. So if you have 72, you'll find like you have, 40-something or thereabout. But then the ones that were having, if you are in terms of like 10%, then the equivalent is 10%. So what is the rationale? And you can see for sure, America is trying to renegotiate with the world. And they're trying to say, we are the big boy here. Yeah. We are the Uncle Sam. You must do it according to our terms. Yes, of course, we've been affected in terms of the drugs and the support for the HIV and AIDS and other kind of programs. And we are now going to relook inwardly. Because you remember, when His Excellency President William Ruto visited the U.S. on a state visit, we had a lot of goodies under the Biden administration, you see? Right. So all those things, and he's already spoken to Marco Rubio, yes, the Foreign Secretary, and so therefore you can say we are engaging. We are, of course, leading the Haiti mission, which is, of course, highly supported by the U.S. So it's a negotiation kind of a moment, right, rather than saying we are abandoning these to go to the streets to look for votes. No, right, you've got to do them concurrently. So you'll find President Ruto is in Nyeri today, in Kiambu, like the way we were in Githongori, but then on the other hand, he's meeting the presidential advisor. Then he's chairing an EAC SADC meeting on the issue of DR Congo, and I think he's done extremely very well on that. And we'll interrogate the how a little bit more, but I wanted to get back on that part of goodies. We've spoken about our goodies from the US, but President Ruto also went with goodies to Mount Kenya, and it seemed the timing was very political because Rigathi gets impeached, the mountain is so-and-so, is quote unquote, I love using that one, hot, and suddenly now there's a tour coming carrying a bag of goodies. The timing was very political. It seems more about galvanizing votes than development, which ideally should be the president's #1 priority. Mariam, politics is about timing. Yes.
Over development?
Yeah. No. The game of politics is about timing. And timing also means you also do development concurrently. You time your development. What did we do? Sorry. We made hard decisions at the beginning of this administration. And they were painful, and there was resistance. But now people are starting to see the results. So much so that if you look at the aftermath of this visit, when others are coming with empty rhetoric, they are being told to also say, what are they coming to bring on board? Are they just coming to just make wild statements? And that's the difference with the Mount Kenya region, for example, because people are very development conscious. Let me give you an example. In Kiambu County, where I come from also, there are over 25 markets that are being built as we speak at different stages for the local traders, the mbogas, and the people there. We have the hugest allocation of 22 billion on affordable housing. You see, there are over 16,000 houses that are being built alone in Kiambu County. So you cannot countermand that when it comes to issues of saying it's only politics. Politics goes hand in hand with development. You see? Because you see, politics is about he who gets what, where, and how. In fact, and indeed, politics is the informal that constitutes the formal. So that informality, where people then are engaging, is how resources are actually allocated based on priorities, on who is able to lobby better. That's the nature of development, really.
The politics narrative oftentimes seems to supersede the development narrative. Let's hold that thought. You've talked about the fact that this government has outdone itself. This government is working. I want us to go back on Friday to what the former Attorney General, Justin Muturi, when we had him here on Fixing the Nation, and some of the statements that he made, pretty jarring ones as well. One of them saying that President Ruto is unfit to lead this country. I want us to see if we can run that clip and then come back and get your reactions to what's working and what's not. Let's see if we can run that clip.
I think William Ruto is one person with two personalities. The William Ruto that presents himself to the public is a completely different character from the one that sits behind in the office and crafts stuff. I think that kind of person is quite a dangerous character. I think William Ruto is actually unfit for the position of President of the Republic of Kenya. I have come sadly to that conclusion. And I have no bitterness. For me, I just feel my own assessment.
Okay, my own assessment, his words, the former AG and public service CS, the president is unfit to lead. Your immediate reactions?
Exactly that, Janet. You've been at it for long. I think the first time you ever interviewed me, Janet, was in 2009, if I'm not wrong. Those are many years ago, when I was a fairly young activist. That time I was speaking for the minorities. Now I'm speaking for the whole of government. That is his own opinion. That is his own judgment. I tend to differ because I have worked with President William Ruto since 2006. That's when I got to know him, when he was Minister for Agriculture. And if there is a robust process that was ever engaged in making a manifesto, which I was part of, in fact, I was the one who drafted the first, manifesto of this government. He was in the front and center of it. Very deliberate actions, very deliberate thinking that went into it, consultations and what have you. And we are doing exactly that, implementing that which we promised within a very limited resource envelope. So for the former cabinet secretary to say that, I think that's unfair. He's only saying this after he's no longer in government. And I have seen a president who is very, very keen on fixing the nation. I have seen a president who is deliberate on having serious, decisions to be made around the economy that may be very unpopular, but which are going to serve the nation right in the long run. And you may want to ask me which ones. Around 2014, I was a member of the Budget and Appropriations Committee of the National Assembly. And I could tell, because of my background in development economics and public policy, that whoever will be president in 2022 will have no country to run. That I can tell you. It didn't matter who was to win the elections because we went on a borrowing spree, we had expanded the size of government, and a lot was not working the way it was supposed to. Come forward, it happened to be President William Ruto. And some people thought that we would not even last 3 months in running this economy. Have we managed to get out of the doldrums? Yes. Why? We've been able to stabilize the macro policies, ensuring the macro environment, and we've also been able to pay debts. We were supposed to default. Now, we also, the deliberate effort to subsidize production rather than consumption has really worked in terms of even lowering inflation, in terms of ensuring that, there's more that is being gained even in terms of, revenue-raising measures. And then, of course, trying to make sure that we reduce wastage in government. So personally, I want to strongly differ with the opinion of the former cabinet secretary and say they could never have been a better person who is able to juggle between politics and governance and leadership at this point in time other than President William Ruto.
There's something about, and I knew even when we were preparing for this interview, I said Isaac will come with the facts. He'll say inflation has come down, and which are from the numbers, like inflation has come down, fuel has come down, etc. But the feeling on the ground is very, very different. And I want to pin that thought because there's also something you've spoken about, the issue of lobbying for development. And you said that it's politics, it's a game, it's you lobby for this and that. And other, like Laikipia Women Rep, we had her on last week, said, you know what, if I'm able to lobby for my people, then so be it. If I'm able to get them development, so be it. Then there's the fact that CSs are said to be afraid of Ruto, at least according to Justin Muturi. There's that whole thing of how strong is the president's grip over the legislature, over the executive. Let's play that clip of Justin Muturi saying CSs are afraid of William Ruto.
Many of the cabinet secretaries who are there, they don't want to pick my calls even on WhatsApp. They are too scared that they may be found to have spoken to me, And I know some others who are telling me, please, just get somebody to call.
On your behalf.
On your behalf, then we can talk on the other. I mean, so what does that tell you? William Ruto has instilled such fear in the entire cabinet that people don't want to speak. And no, it is live and let live.
No, not at all. By the way, honestly, that's not true. I happen to be privileged to sit in the cabinet committees. I happen to be privileged to sit in meetings where the president is chairing. And he always encourages free and robust debate. And it's not something that is new. In fact, many are the times that people would have a contrary opinion. I mean, it's good to be fair, honestly. I tend to disagree. There is what is called collective responsibility on the part of cabinet. So if you're a cabinet secretary and you're opposing the very government that you're serving in, of course, people would not want to be seen to be in the same league with you. That is given, because you raise your complaints internally. You don't go and raise them openly, because then it's like speaking from both ends of the mouth. Government cannot be contradicting itself. You cannot go out there and challenge government and expect people to be comfortable with you, because that has been a trend with some of the officials that have since left government.
But if you feel that the government is wrong, for example, in the case of Justin Muturi, he said, I can't stand by abductions. I cannot stand by abductions. That is something that is unconstitutional, wrong, ethically, legally. So should CSs and other members of government just be able to, sit quietly as illegalities go over their heads?
No, there are two things here. One, if you have an issue, you raise it internally, you have it discussed, and then, of course, when you come out, you speak based on the commonly agreed position. That is the only way there can be discipline in government, and that has always been the case. That is the principle of collective responsibility. But when you feel that you are really aggrieved and you do not go by the principles or by the behavior or the character of a certain issue in government, I mean, the way in which it is being prosecuted, the honest and fair thing to do is to resign. Out of principle. And people have done that in the past. You say, I no longer associate myself with this government. Mwai Kibaki did so, Kenneth Matiba did so. Even Raila Odinga, when he couldn't agree with Fort Kenya, he went on his own. So that then proves to even Mother Karua, it goes ahead to prove that then you are a principled person. But you don't just, throw epithets and expect to be sacked, so then you can, reap political capital out of it. We are all together. They are not everything. I mean, even the three of us here, we are not going to agree on every other matter. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that is the end of the road, because some of these things are momentary. They are momentary, for a given reason. And then we move on. But you cannot then say that anyone in government, as long as they are aggrieved, they should just come out in the public and then disagree. I mean, it would be chaos. Even you yourself, you call me here to ask me, this government that you speak for, I mean, how is it coordinated? How is it being run? We have to have some semblance of, coordination, unity, and purpose.
I believe Justin Muturi alluded to the fact that there were matters that he tried to raise. But in your view, should he then have resigned before being sacked? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. I think, in my opinion, based on the trend of other people, if you feel for sure it goes against your conscience, the best thing is for you to resign and say, then I no longer associate myself with the ideas of this. This is not what we campaign for, and so therefore, then you move on with your life. But then when you now wait for you to be sacked, and then now you say you are bearing it all, I think it reeks of some kind of dishonesty.
You've spoken to what you feel is working in the government. You've spoken to certain developmental matters, etc. On the other hand, we're seeing matters around health, the implementation and rollout of SHIF and SHA. We're looking at matters around the transitions within CBC, capitation issues in the education sector as well. So to be fair, in as much as you've spoken to what is working, in your view, Mr. Spokesman, what is not working in government?
I think one of the things that could work better if we had more resources, then we'd be able to cover more ground. And I think personally, that is a challenge that I see a lot, that there is a lot to deliver. But then when you match with the available resources, then it becomes very difficult. So that then all of the demands are valid. all of the priority, everything can be prioritized, but then you have to start from somewhere. And I think, Janet, because also you've traveled, you've also worked abroad, that's a challenge of African governments. Maybe because we have vast areas to cover, we have huger populations, and then, of course, we are working in a kind of a disadvantaged environment, even in terms of international financial system. So personally, at the macro level, I think, yes, there's a lot that can be done, but then we have a limited resource envelope. Yeah.
But then we always have money to increase MP salaries, to renovate State House, to renovate the office of the Deputy President, etc. But when it comes to development matters, that seems to be where our budgeting seems to get a cash crunch.
And we want you to hold that thought, if that's okay, because I believe it's already time to go for a quick break. When we come back, please pick up from where Mariam left off, because it's pertinent that you speak to the fact that there is spending, sometimes overspending, with funds that could be redirected to other critical matters. We're speaking to the government spokesman, Isaac Mwaura. He's with us on Fixing the Nation. We'll be back after this break. It's 7:30. Stay with us.
Well, welcome back to Fixing the Nation. We're in studio with government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura, figuring out what's working and what's not working as we try and fix the nation. Just before we went on the break, the question you spoke about the lack of resources as a constraint as far as development is concerned. And yeah, this is a government that's called for austerity. President William Ruto himself promised austerity as far as government spending is concerned, but State House renovations, MP salaries, all these non-essential expenditure seem to be always finding a budget. But then when it comes to JSS teachers or capitation funds or Shifsha, it seems that there's constraints as far as those things are concerned.
Yeah, let me answer this in details. First and foremost, this is the first time we have had negative budget provisions. Mariam. Yeah, on government. By the way, the first supplementary for this financial year was negative for many budget vote heads. In fact, just for Kenyans to understand, there was zero allocation for innovations, other than those that had been commissioned earlier. If you look at the facilities... Earlier than this financial year, that's the year 2023-2024. But if you look at the State House, it was an eyesore. That I can assure you.
To who, though?
Even to the public. I can tell you for sure. They were even leaking roofs. The place was not looking good. That I can assure you. And so therefore, the renovations were long overdue. Even to give that State House a stature that it deserves. When it comes to the office of the Deputy President, the renovations that have been made are, for example, to create a new wing for the holding of cabinet committee meetings, and adjusting to ensure that there is more accommodation for those staffers that work in that office and all of that. I think that was necessary. But I tend to think that those two have been blown out of proportion, as if to really magnify the largesse that is supposed to be within government. No, not really. I sit in the monthly meetings of all the PSS, and everyone, many of the state departments are complaining they do not have enough resources, and so we have to make adjustments. So I don't think, in my humble submission as a government spokesperson, that they have been wasted, Mariam.
Right. Yeah, but you say state departments are complaining they don't get enough money, but the executive doesn't seem to suffer from the same problem. Neither does, like we still talk about MPs also having a salary, increment and perks coming their way. So it seems that, there's budget cuts or constraints on one end, and on the other end, largesse and excess or abundance, for lack of a better word. And unfortunately, it's the places that really need that money that are suffering. For example, capitation funds, teachers will say, the Treasury will say we've released capitation, teachers and principals say we haven't gotten these capitation funds, things like that.
Yeah, I think on the issue of state departments, it's just good to maybe explain that state departments are the ones that form a ministry. So every PS, principal secretary, is in charge of a state department, and then of course the state departments are then under a minister. So yes, so that is the executive. When it comes to the issue of
the executive, as in the president,
the presidency.
Yeah, the presidency.
No. Even within the presidency, my office is within the presidency. My office is within the executive office of the president and at the head of public service. And even there are resources. For example, maybe I need to tell you this: within the office of the president, our resource envelope that we required or the money that we require, let me not speak in terms of budget because sometimes we may lose people. The money that we required for this financial year was 15.6 billion if we are to perform optimally. But how much were we able to get? 3.91 billion, and much of that is salaries. If you look at even the development expenditure, out of a 4.2 trillion budget, we only have about 400 billion or so for development. So we don't have the money because we are paying a lot of debts, and so therefore that's the issue. Now let me come to the issue of Parliament. Now that there have been fury around the issue of mileage. And some people getting more mileage than others, and others being disadvantaged, especially the people who come from around Nairobi, Mount Kenya region, and what have you. So the SRC was trying to fix that issue, so that then at least there's some fairness in the manner in which members of parliament are compensated for their travel to and from work, but also as they go back to their constituencies, because they have two offices, here in Nairobi and also back in where they have been elected. So that's the whole issue there. It was a debate that was there when I was in the National Assembly way back in 2013, even when I was in the Senate, and I think it's only fair that it would have been concluded because there's a lot of misunderstanding. And so I don't think it's a new expenditure per se. It's like reallocation of monies already that were in Parliament to be more fairly distributed.
But I think those are Mr. Mwaura, those are large amounts, and it does feel like a deprioritization, to be very honest. I think a renovation could have waited. And that kind of spending also speaks to elements of asking, is the money that is supposed to be set aside being used as it should? Another thing that Justin Muturi alluded to, it's important that we bring back some of what he said so that we can react to it, because what we're trying to do is get to the bottom and to get to the truth of this matter. Those numbers are huge. I think some of it was inflated beyond what was necessary, given what is happening in the country. But let's go back to that clip that Justin Muturi said, where he alluded to the fact that there is corruption in the office of the president. Let's have a listen.
Is he corrupt?
Who?
William Ruto.
I think, I don't know.
But if you see him talking about corruption, you're like, who is this talking about corruption? Is it because he's corrupt?
I have so many examples. It's only that.
Not an example, but is he corrupt? Examples aside.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Very. Yes, irredeemably.
Okay.
Corrupt.
Irredeemably.
Yeah.
Was the word used. Mariam, if I'm to just kind of like hop onto what you're trying to say, for me it's more of, it's the scale of spending vis-a-vis what the gaps are. I think that's what we're trying to reconcile. And you can speak to it, as she mentioned, really good at kind of speaking to the numbers, the allocation, spilling over from one budget to another. The truth of the matter is Kenyans are feeling the pinch in many ways. And so even aesthetics-wise, even as a spokesperson, is it then a good idea to have some of this bloated spending, to bloat an already bloated government by bringing on several new PSs and adding hefty salaries to them, in light of the fact that there are so many other issues and institutions that are grappling with the deficit?
I think the issue of the former cabinet secretary talking about the president, that is his own personal opinion, which of course personally I also want to beg to differ, because then when you talk about someone being irredeemably corrupt, what do you mean exactly? I mean honestly, that's outlandish. That is extreme.
It means there's no universe where they would not be corrupt. There's no time.
Yeah, that's wrong. I mean, because on what basis is he saying that? Honestly, that's his own assertion, and I think I would want to completely disassociate myself with such kind of assertion, because that's not true. Now, coming to the issue
he did speak to his own experiences while in cabinet, while Attorney General, etc. He said he was coerced, for example, into signing deals, things like that, and those were his statements. But that was his experience feeding into that statement of he's irredeemably corrupt.
Okay, but then can it be verifiable? When you have been removed from a position, one can say anything really to justify the exit. Now let's come to the issue of Janet. You tend to say that in terms of the budget making process, what is the government doing? Procurement. The president has issued a very strong directive to the National Treasury to actually have e-procurement, so that people can see what is it that government is buying, at what cost, market rate, and what have you. And that's an issue that we have been grappling with, even when I was a member of parliament, between what can be bought directly from the market and what is bought by government through procurement. That, I think, is something that needs to be fixed, so that then also government expenditure is not procurement driven, or that procurement in government does not gobble up resources that would have been able to do so much more if they were well administered. It's a challenge that many governments have been grappling with, and e-procurement is a solution that needs to be implemented. I think National Treasury is working out on that. The other issue also is the issue of having a single treasury account, so that then you are able to get resources going to where they are needed the most. Some of those measures are important. The other issue is about accrual accounting. You account in accrual manner, so that then you are able to see the whole picture. So some of those measures are being implemented, and increasingly, we are seeing results going forward. So I think, yes, we acknowledge there are challenges, because it's not good to deny what people may be saying. But then the question would be, what is being done on that? Now, the other issue that I think is maybe concerning Kenyans, and I have had conversations with people on the streets in Nyeri. They stopped me when I was buying something, and we had a conversation there. I mean, this weekend I was in Kabete, and all those kind of things. Circulation, because of payment of pending bills. And the solution we have is we are going to incrementally pay. That is why we were able to securitize the fuel levy, the increase of 7 shillings, so that then we were able to get over 175 billion, and now contractors are going back on site, because that was a big issue. We've also been able to get new funding from China, about 34 billion, that will help in terms of those road contractors and what have you. And then also, when it comes to the issue of those that people have not been paid, you look at even people who have less than 10 million, we have a plan for them, like the hospitals. And by June, we'll be able to have released quite a number of money. And that is why we had the supplementary budget too. So that then we are able to reallocate resources, and therefore so that there is more circulation of money within the economy.
We'll try and come back to some of the pressing questions that people have. I know we're running out of time, but even over the weekend, Mariam, there was a disruption that happened in the church service, something that we've talked about today.
That's true. Rigathi Gachagua was at a church, of course, and then some goons seemed to infiltrate the happenings at the church, and of course then he said, you know what, don't retaliate, and he seemed to allude to the fact that there could be players that are either funding the goons or making sure that anything he goes to is disrupted. But let's hear from the deputy president at church, the former deputy president, sorry, at church.
Even now, tukiwa provoked, I want to ask our people to be peaceful. Hii maneno tutasota out kwa debe. That is the right way ya kusota out hii maneno tuko nayo na huyu rais. Tutasota out kwa debe. Nyinyi mtulie. Don't be provoked. Don't revenge. Don't fight back. Wacha tu atuchokore, wacha afanye vile anataka. But I want to ask our people to remain peaceful, to remain obedient to the rule of law.
The fact that Riggy G has found himself cornered many a time, and you can see some of the clips there that were of what was happening while he was at church, and you can see disruptive actors, his vehicle was stoned, etc. He's spoken to the fact that, it's his political enemies who are galvanizing people and working against him. I'll just ask it point blank. Are government resources used to mobilize people like this?
Not at all. Not at all, because, and by the way, from the word go, the government strongly condemns any form of political violence, because it cuts both sides, and there's no end in sight when it comes to those kind of things, because you don't know who is orchestrating this kind of attacks. So really, this is not something that government associates itself with, because we are there to maintain law and order and to ensure that everybody is safe, to do whatever they are supposed to do. And, there's a difference of political opinion, but by the end of the day, Kenyans are going to judge. And according to what I know as a government spokesperson, as a government spokesman, is that we've done very well for this administration, and Kenyans will judge. And as I told you earlier on, we made painful decisions at the beginning, but they are now starting to yield fruits, and people can see what is it that we were doing.
We also have a reaction. We still want to hold you on that a bit. Moses Kuria tweeted something, a message on X. Let's see if we can get that. Let's see if we can get that tweet. Let's take a look at it. It's utterly ungodly. Leave your backward and primitive political wars out of places of worship. Today was AIPCA. Colonel reloaded. The lightning that will strike us is still loading. And then he says, Polisana to the former deputy president.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think we were in church yesterday, for example, with the majority leader and other leaders from Kiambu County. And even then, I mean, increasingly the church is saying we will not allow politicians or, public officials to speak. You've also seen that with Ole Sapit. And I think in a way, there has been this trend where, church services, even you members of the fourth estate are looking forward to who will say what on Sunday in church. And I think that's not a very, very good, culture, because people go to church to worship and to do what it is. Even those that are maybe accusing government, we have seen very inflammatory statements from, the people who are oppositional to government. They have actually said very outlandish things in the pulpit. So I think it's good to be fair. We condemn violence. We also condemn incitements. So that then when people go to church, they just worship, and then we move on, to other things in the course of the week.
But even in the matter in which Rigiji was impeached was very quick, clearly a galvanizing of political efforts. And then now that he's out of power, it seems that he's still being fought. It's really hard to say, to look at it from an outsider's perspective and see that, government isn't fighting those who are opposing it. And in this case, it's Rigathi Gachagua. Whether that's through an impeachment or through galvanizing young people on the ground.
And incessant attacks, yeah.
I think I tend to deal with you, Mariam, because politics is a very contestation. It's a very competitive, space. And my experience with politics, sometimes you don't even know who is your real opponent at times. They could even be with the people that you are with. Sometimes also you find people, trying to create a scenario so that they get more public, appeal and sympathy. It has actually happened before. So you really can't quite say that because a certain individual is in this current situation, even within government, people tend to compete because it's a race against, mileage, against, rising politically. So it's a very dicey situation. You really can't say that there's collective effort, towards a certain goal against a certain individual. What we want to do, obviously, as a government, is to ensure that we deliver to the Kenyans, and also we maintain our support base, the people who voted for the government, and even invite more so that we secure a second term that will ensure that we continue with the agenda that we set ourselves, to accomplish.
So the former deputy president is making false claims?
Yes, I would want to say that, yes. I mean, honestly, he needs to actually, come out and give, it's his word against everyone else.
You had a follow-up. I just wanted to quickly, I think it would be unfair not to kind of share where people are. There's some conversations here. My question to the spokesman, why is it that when the president is on regional tours, his security detail causes accidents? For example, the Nairobi tour where a foreign national died and residents were robbed. The same Eugene says, how far has the wheel of justice gone for that victim? Somebody else here saying the notion of resources not being enough is a bad one. Frida, it's very unfortunate that citizens are heavily taxed with no resources given priority to the key three sectors: education, health, and security. The Kikombe, so Janet and Mariam, at what point do we get to know how far the Eurobond case has gone, and when would we get this stolen money back, or should we wait for the task force? Manenos. So some quick reactions, talking about security, talking about the security detail during the president's tour, talking about public knowledge and awareness on some of where their taxes are going to. Just quick reactions from you. I think it's important that we speak to our audience.
Yes. Thank you, Janet. On matter security, I think when I came into the show, you gave a very good program, Mariam, on what Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen will be doing in the Coast region.
Yes.
To ensure that everything is okay. You know, there was actually an attack, in Boni, and it was rebuffed. It was repulsed. And so therefore, we are working very hard to ensure that we secure this country. It's not easy. It's not very easy because, we have a lot of, engagements from northern Kenya to North Rift to, south. But then it's much better than the way it was before. And also, actually, when I look at my work as a government spokesperson, Janet, most of the time I'm answering questions relating to security, health, education, economy, and sometimes general politics or policies that the government is doing. So when on matters health, for example, we've been able to roll out Taifa Care, and Taifa Care was supposed to start, on 1st of March, the 1st of March last year. But then we had to be pushed back to October last year. And yet the laws had been signed on 19th of October, 4 laws by the president, because of court cases, because of strikes, and what have you. Now, have we been able to fix the situation? We are in the process of doing so. That is why, for example, we've been able to increase, the oncology package to 550,000.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you. We'll come back to that. I think while it's important to outline some of what you're trying to do, I think right now we do want to focus on sort of where people's mind is, the spirit, the mood, the temperament. So we just want to circle back to some of what the listeners and viewers are saying.
Right.
Yeah.
From a personal perspective, just it's been asked there was the case of a civilian who was hit by the presidential motorcade allegedly on Gong Road. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. I think that is a matter. It's quite unfortunate that there was that incident, but I would also want to urge that we as a government, we send our most sincere condolences, that we also allow for conclusive investigation on the matter, so that we also do not comment about this issue, without all of the facts, because it has to take time to ensure that exactly what happened. And of course, if anyone is found responsible, the government is going to take action. Yeah.
Also, somebody wanting to bring back the tweet that Moses Kuria put out, I think just kind of speaking to the fact that he's an insider who put out a message, sort of like stretching out an arm, a helping arm, so to speak, and saying Pole sana to Rigathi. Again, if we can just repeat what Honorable Moses Kuria said, this is utterly ungodly. Leave your backward and primitive political wars out of places of worship. The lightning will strike us. Is still loading. It seems like it speaks volumes of somebody who is in the inside. We could say somebody like Justin Muturi, who is out, can make such statements. Somebody who is within government seems to be alluding to more than maybe what you're admitting. I think Mariam asked whether there are certain arms that are fighting the likes of Rigathi Gachagua. That tweet by Moses Kuria, it's loaded.
I think the way I understand it is just to basically condemn political violence in places of worship, and that is unacceptable even to the government. I don't think, Janet, we can say that the government is encouraging that kind of mayhem and chaos. As I said earlier on, you never know where it's going to stop. And of course, we need to have that decorum. And of course, even those who are going to those places of worship, let them also not use them, the politicians, to incite others or to unfairly, make statements that are going to divide Kenyans.
It sounds like
if it's a false state. So it was a false statement from Rigathi Gachagua, but then again on the other end, we're condemning political violence in all its forms.
Mariam, everybody must be held accountable to what they say, and so therefore, there is what Rigathi Gachagua is saying. There is what another person may say. By the end of the day, the government does not condone any form of political violence, because the government exists to ensure law and order and justice to everyone.
Phil, our director, how are we doing for time? Don't know whether we should take a break.
All right.
Okay.
So if you'll allow us, Honorable Mwaura, we'll have you on for just a little bit longer because the questions are plenty.
No problem.
And of course, the reactions on YouTube are so many. Hashtag is Fixing the Nation NTV. Any questions you have for the government spokesperson, I'm seeing them coming in, and we'll share as many as we can with him before we let him go. But we'll be going on a short break right back after this. Hour 3 of Fixing the Nation. We're doing it one conversation at a time. Of course, my name is Mariam. Shah alongside Janet Mbogwa, and the third musketeer, Eric Latif, will be joining us soon. We're in studio with government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura, figuring out what's working, what's not working. And of course, we just wanted to let him go. But before that, your feedback was really overwhelming, and it would be unfair to sort of have him leave before he's heard from the people. We said we're doing this one conversation at a time, and it's a conversation for all of us. Looking through the feedback on YouTube especially, there's a lot of questions, especially around spending. Mwangaza TV is asking, when will this government start working, right? When will you drop these political tours spending billions? I think President Ruto should go for benchmarking in Burkina Faso. I've seen President Ibrahim Traore being referenced a few times in the comments there, especially when he talked about resources. And it was like, there's people who have less resources, but seem to be making it work. Also, the issue of the executive has money for renovations. This is from Musa Huko. The executive has money for renovations. MPs can add themselves. But when do we draw why do we draw the line when it comes to paying teachers, doctors? I'm also seeing Mumbai Eurobond. We'll get back to that. I want to start with those ones. It seems like people feel priorities are just not right, as we see our education system in crisis, and we've said it again and again. But yes, it always seems like even if it was a previous budget, Janet said that money could still have been used on something else, even if it was from the previous year's financial budget. And it's not that in the previous year we're in such a good position that we still had money for renovations. Yeah, teachers, healthcare, that's where we seem to draw the line as far as our budgeting is concerned.
So let me first say this. If you look at TikTok, there seems to be a very silent psychological operation promoting the kind of the takeover of the military. And some people have criticized me in the past about saying that there could be external interference on how people tend to make their decisions. I mean, you know of the issue of Cambridge Analytica. I had a conversation with the former president of the German Bundestag, and he told me that it's the same challenge they have also in Germany. So if you talk about certain countries or certain presidents in comparison with others, I can see a very deliberate effort. I don't know where it is coming from, but there is a deliberate effort to actually indignify certain African leaders, you know, making them look like old or corrupt and what have you, and promoting others, especially of the military orientation. And we need to be very careful about that, because maybe somebody somewhere is engineering coups around African countries. And I need to speak very boldly about that, whatever quotas they are. Now, when it comes to the issue of security, I mean, the issue of education, this administration has done extremely well. We have 76,000 teachers who've been employed. We've had we have 16,000 classrooms that are now being completed. We have been able to replace 8,707 teachers who have left the teaching profession in government out of natural attrition. We have been able to release over 48 billion now in terms of capitation to schools. We've also been able to distribute over 9 million textbooks. And of course, to ensure transparency, beg your pardon, we had a program of ensuring that people pay school fees through e-citizen. But you saw what the court did. And I think it's good so that it is people can see transparency. So there is fight back by those who may not want, that kind of transparency, so that we had a problem, for example, of knowing how many children really are, because certain teachers were actually inflating the number of children. That is something that the president himself has addressed. So a lot of transparency, because we are spending over 600 billion in the education sector. In fact, it is the hugest, followed by security, so it's usually security, health, education, as we put it. When it comes to matters health, in the supplementary 2, we've now been able to allocate 3 billion shillings to the primary care fund, which is actually taking care of many people who are called, indigents, can't pay, won't pay, so that they can access level 1 to 3. We've also been able to allocate another 3 billion towards the ECCIF, Emergency and Critical Care Fund, Chronic and Critical Care Fund, Insurance Fund, which of course will make sure that then people are able to be attended to when they have emergencies or they have chronic diseases. At the same time, we're encouraging Kenyans, because it's an insurance like any other, please pay your premium, the 300 bob, so that then the more we pay, the more it helps people. Like I pay myself, and so if I'm not using it, it helps another person. That's how it works. We have over 19.7 million Kenyans who've registered, but then we need you to pay, and that's why we are coming up with a program of where you can pay every day. If it's 300 bob, you can pay 10 bob through M-Pesa. That is in the works. You see, we've also been able to increase, for this ICU HDU per bed night from 4,000 to about 28,000. So you can see we are increasing increasingly listening to people and changing even in terms of the means testing instrument so that it is more, sensitive to people's incomes. The same case, we are now having the participation of Kenyans according to the court ruling on the new funding model so that we get to hear what people are saying. So we are a listening government. We obey court orders. When it comes to matter of security, as I said earlier, we are trying to improve every day, getting new equipment. Like now, the issue of femicide. It has now been elevated into a whole, department at the DCI office. We are investigating cases. We have gotten more equipment, to ensure that then we even get into these issues of homicide and also missing persons. So Janet, Mariam, we are trying our level best within a very limited resource envelope. Of course, we cannot resolve all of the problems at once. And I think it's not fair to say that we are politicking in the place of development. They are going concurrently. For example, we are having sector, meetings with all of the players on value chains. You saw President Ruto meeting the people who are in the coffee sector. And now we've been able to ensure that we remove cartels there, and of course we've been able to increase, coffee, price per kilo to over 100 bob. Right. The same case with milk, to about 50 bob. The same case with the three, qualities of Mira. Yeah, all those kind of things. We are trying to do something. It's just that now we need to amplify that, and we are calling upon you, the members of the fourth estate, to help us also to say the positive things that the government is doing.
I think there's been we're almost out of time. I think one of the things that we've been challenged with is having a coherent communications message. I think that's one of the things that is creating all of this. There's so many different voices coming out, and as the spokesperson, I think that's why we're at this table having this conversation, is that there's so many conversations being spewed out time and time again by government voices, and they are not often on the same page. We're about to leave. Did we have another question on Eurobond? We have about 3 minutes to time.
Actually, just wanted to wrap up as we do the news fix, because we're out of time, Mr. Spokesman. But thank you so much for making time for us. I think these conversations need to continue, and we will have you again because we've barely scratched the surface as far as people's questions, as far as our own questions are concerned. But thank you so much for making time for us. We do appreciate it. That was government spokesperson Isaac Mwaura. We tried to figure out what's working, what's not working from the government point of view. There's also a difference between what is often felt on the ground, and we'll continue to interrogate that. Absolutely. But we wanted to share some stories that we have been tracking since last night as well, before we get into a conversation about cholera.